Welcome to Lotus Lane Daily. I'm glad you're here. Today's wisdom is for anyone going through something hard. You know that feeling when you realize you are the only one who noticed that your partner was upset 3 days ago, the only one who remembered your friend's difficult week, the only one who asked how things went, who followed up, who thought to check in, and you do all of it without being asked because that is just who you are. And yet somewhere underneath the competence and the care, there is a quiet exhaustion that nobody sees because you are too busy seeing everyone else. This is what doing all the emotional labor feels like from the inside. It is not dramatic. It does not announce itself. It shows up as a steady, low-grade depletion, the feeling of being the person who holds everything together emotionally while nobody holds you. The term emotional labor gets used a lot, but what it actually means in a relationship or a household is this. One person consistently tracks the emotional state of the people around them, manages the friction before it becomes conflict, plans for how events will land emotionally, carries the mental load of the relationship's health, and processes their own feelings largely alone because there is no one functioning at that register to process with. The other person benefits from this work without necessarily knowing it is work, or that one person is doing it almost entirely. Why this is hard to talk about. The reason people who do all the emotional labor rarely say so is that it is built into how they see themselves. You are the caring one, the perceptive one, the one who holds the family together. Complaining about it feels like complaining about being a good person, which feels self-defeating and slightly absurd. And so instead of naming the imbalance, you absorb it. You take a little more. You give a little more. You tell yourself it is who you are, and maybe it is fine, until it is not fine. Until you find yourself resentful in ways you cannot fully explain, or exhausted by the very relationships you have poured the most into, or quietly fantasizing about what it would feel like if someone else managed things for a while and you could just stop, be taken care of, not have to translate everyone's feelings into action all the time. A philosophical text on inner strength puts it plainly. True compassion is not soft or weak. It takes great strength to truly care about others, to shoulder their pain. That is genuinely true. Caring deeply does take strength, but strength without replenishment runs out. And when the person who does all the caring has no one caring for them, what looked like a gift starts to feel like a trap. What is actually happening in the dynamic? In most cases, the imbalance is not malicious. The person doing less emotional labor is often not withholding it consciously. They may simply have never been expected to develop that muscle in their family of origin, in previous relationships, and so they did not. They may not realize that what you do involves effort. Because you do it so smoothly, it looks effortless. They may be operating on the assumption that if something were wrong, you would say so, not realizing that the whole burden of noticing when things are wrong has also fallen to you. This is worth naming because if you go into any conversation about this with the belief that your partner is deliberately taking advantage of you, the conversation will not go well. The more accurate and more workable frame is that this is a skill gap combined with an expectation gap, and both of those can be addressed directly. The harder truth is this. Once someone has been consistently and reliably doing all the emotional work in a relationship, there is often very little incentive for the other person to change. Not because they are lazy or selfish, but because systems find equilibrium. The arrangement works, for one of you more than the other, but it functions. Change requires someone to disrupt the equilibrium, and that someone will almost certainly have to be you. What you can do, that is not just asking more nicely. Stop managing the consequences of their emotional absence before they feel them. This is the hardest one. If you always smooth over the friction before your partner has a chance to notice it, they will never learn to notice it. If you always handle the difficult conversation with the in-laws before your partner has to think about it, they will not develop the habit of thinking about it. This is not about letting things fall apart. It is about making space for the other person to step into, which requires leaving the space empty long enough for them to notice it exists. Name specific tasks, not general feelings. Saying, I feel like I do everything emotionally is true, but it is also easy to argue with. Saying, I need you to be the one to check in with your mother this week, without me prompting you, is specific and actionable. People cannot distribute labor they cannot see. Making the invisible work visible, naming it out loud, explicitly, is a prerequisite for any change. Have the actual conversation, not the hinted version. A book on communication makes the point that one sincere conversation can accomplish more than 100 speeches or 1,000 emails. The hinting version of this conversation, sighs, loaded silences, oblique references to being tired, almost never changes anything. The direct version, I need to talk with you about something that has been affecting me. Here's what it is. Here's what I need. Gives the relationship real information to work with. Ask for emotional support directly, in the moment. One of the self-reinforcing parts of this dynamic is that people who give a lot of emotional support rarely ask for it in return, because asking feels like weakness or imposition. The result is that their partner never develops the habit of offering it because it has never been needed. Start asking, directly, not as a test, not with the expectation of failure, but as a genuine request. I had a hard day. Can you just listen for a few minutes? Notice what you cannot change and decide what you will do about it. There is a useful observation from writings on personal change. To seek reform without changing ourselves is like trying to see our own reflection in the mirror by polishing its back. Sometimes this dynamic does not change no matter how directly you name it, because your partner does not have the capacity or the will to develop this way. If that is the case, you have a different decision to make, not about how to manage them better, but about what you can genuinely live with and what you cannot. The part that is about you, not just them. Here is something that tends to get lost in conversations about emotional labor imbalance. The people who take on this role usually get something from it too. Not in a way that makes the imbalance fair, it does not. But the role of the emotionally capable one often carries identity, worth, a sense of being needed, sometimes even a form of control. If you manage everyone's emotions, nothing catches you completely off guard. Acknowledging this is not the same as saying you deserve less care in return. It is just that lasting change in a relationship dynamic is more likely when both people have looked honestly at what they are each getting from the current arrangement and what it is each costing them. You may have been the emotionally capable one for so long that you have not seriously imagined being on the receiving end of that care. It is worth imagining. It is worth asking for. You have been strong for everyone else for a long time. That says something real and good about who you are. It does not mean you have to keep doing it alone, and it does not mean that wanting to be cared for in return is a demand you have not earned. You have earned it. More than enough. The question is whether you will let yourself ask for it. That's the wisdom for today. If something here landed for you, share it with one person who might need to hear it too. Take it slow. I'll see you tomorrow on Lotus Lane Daily.